Hello, everyone. This is Bill Acevedo. I'd like to welcome everyone to this session of Dell Tech Talk. For the duration of the demo portion, everyone will be on mute. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the chat window, and we'll try to get to them after the demo. And before I start, can everyone hear? Alicia?
Yep.
Okay, good. Today we're going to be reviewing the license import process, discovery profiles, and we're going to look at application settings. So let's get started with the license process. So on the home page, there is an area where you can import licenses under license management. And as you already know, when a license comes close to expiring within 30 days, you'll see a little bar at the bottom. And it will tell you have so many days left before it expires. You can click on that link as well. It takes you to this license page. Actually, you'll go to the subscription information page. But generally, when you import a new license, it's simple as going to select. And this license can be anywhere. In fact, the license suite that I have showing here are on a remote server. And so it can be on a local box. It can be anywhere, really. Just as long as you can get to it through the browser, it should import it. Before I actually import the license, to show you what it looks like, I wanted to kind of cover a little bit the license screen. And so there's a couple three things we need to note here. When Dell generates a license, there's three things that happen. You're going to see this OWare Standard Edition. Every time you add a new license, it's going to increment this, and that's because this edition is going to be incremented. Number two, you're going to update the RTM core license. We'll also have a new date down here, and then you'll update the TFA license as well. When you have out of the box, when you have the trial, you're going to see the TFA with an NA, and you'll just see the default license, which will just show the initial standard and the additional here. And so just a word on the additional. The additional is actually used just to license, show license in classifications of device class and vendor. It's not used for much of anything else. And then you're going to see the standard edition. This is where the application server expiration date gets enforced. And so when the license expires, this is the date that you're going to look at. And then the core here is where the actual RTM is set. And so if you scroll through this, if you have a generated license, what you'll see here is the RTM total here. Easy way to look at it. And then on the device license tab, you're going to have basically a breakdown by class. And so how many switches you have, firewalls, that sort of thing. And so you'll also see the right to manage here. I have a total of 200. And then I'll show you over my currently managed devices. And so I want to go over real quickly and just show the import of a demo license. There's one back here. I should have one here. Here's a demo one. Before I pull that in, I just want you to note that we're looking at a 2020 expiration here, June 2020. June 27, 2020, and then so these three here, the standard and the core and common are all set to a date right now. So we assume the customer's on this and they purchased a new license. I'm going to import this new one, which should give us an extra year and 20 TFA and 600 devices. So I'm going to open that. And so you see it was updated here, and go back to the product license. Now we see it's been incremented by a year. Only these three have been updated: the standard, the core, and the common. And so I got, again, out of the box, the TFA is not going to show anything. It's just going to show the NA. But as you generate a license, you'll get a new license, and you'll see here my export count's been increased to 20. You'll see my core, my RTM total is now 600. So this is how we increment the dates. We add on to the prior license. It was 2019. I'm sorry, 2020, and it was incremented to 1 year and 1 day when I added that license. So that's really how simple it is. On occasion, you may have a problem. I'm not sure why you would have this problem, but if you need to go to the command line to install a license, it's as simple as giving the command license importer, and then you just give the name of the license, license.xml. Sometimes if you just type it on a Linux box, it'll finish the name for you. And you'll notice here I have my own name here. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's as long as it's an XML file that you can import. And if we were to do on the command line, it's as simple as entering this command. And this is available at the command prompt. You might have to get into the OR environment, but generally it's available without that. You do need to have the license in the directory where the importer is. Just click enter. And it'll go through some steps here. And it should show done here in a minute. Okay, there we go. And then it says done. So that's what you should see when it's successfully imported. And then my license should be updated over here on the license tab. So it's really as simple as that. And there's really no other restrictions in terms of where you get that license from. Okay, that was a brief overview on the license. Let's go into the discovery profiles. So to create a discovery profile, well, first I should start off, there's a couple of ways to discover. There is the homepage discovery for a quick discovery, resource discovery over here, and then there's the profile to the discovery profile manager. It's as simple as right-clicking in new and creating a new one. I'm going to show you one that I've already created, and we'll walk through some details here. Here's one here. I'm going to edit it. So typically I just give it a name and a description. I want to highlight this option over here, use as discovery default. If you check this, if you invoke a discovery from the home page, from that quick discovery, it will use the details of that profile. Currently, there is a default profile that is hidden that you don't see that's used when you invoke it from the home page. And so just be aware that if you want to use a custom profile from the discovery, quick discovery page on the home page, you can just set it as the default here. Real quickly here, we have a couple of options here. This is for naming, how it's going to show up in the resource manager. You can manage by host name or IP address if you choose. You can resolve the host name if you choose to. That's by default. And then ICMP ping devices. Some devices don't respond to ping, but they're fully discoverable. If a device doesn't respond to ping, but you still have SNMP and CLI credentials, you can still discover the device. Just uncheck that, and it won't even try the ping before it does the discovery. In most cases, in all cases, when discovery first attempts an action, it's going to go ping it first. If it cannot ping it, it will immediately fail the discovery. And so this will get around that option. You can simply uncheck it. If you're discovering a large subnet and or a range of devices, you can set a location. This will look at the device's SNMP location. If it matches, it will discover it. Same with the vendor. You can say I want to choose by Cisco or Dell or Force 10 or whatever the vendor name is. And if you find that in your discovery process of your subnet or your range, it will only select for those. You can also filter by class of device. If I only want firewall, if I only want laptops, or whatever it is, it will choose that as well. You also have the option, if you have a device that has no command line and has no SNMP, and you just want to manage it by pinging it, you can just select this here, and it will allow you to just discover it with an IP address only. And that's useful for in some cases where you don't have a driver, or you just want to know if the device is up or down through an ICMP ping, and that's perfectly valid there just by checking that. And then manage unclassified devices is the one where if you have a device that is not yet supported or in a class or a sysobject ID that we don't know about, it can't associate it to a driver, then it's an unclassified device. You can check that, and despite the fact that it is not a known sysoid that attaches to a device, it will continue to try to manage that. And so if you have an SNMP credential, you can still manage it, or you can ping it and manage it via SNMP. So some options there. The network is where you specify your IP address. You can do a range. If you highlight over the tooltip, you'll see you can separate it with commas or do dashes, or you can even do a /24 on there. Your options are CIDR by CIDR address. This is where you just put in a basically CIDR, basically like a subnet, they call it a CIDR address. And then you can do by host name if you want, enter a host name. IPv6 address can be entered, and then by subnet here. Okay. And then finally here we have the authentications that you can put in your screen here. So one thing to note here is you can add as many authentications as you want. What it'll do is it will look at them in order. And so the first thing it's going to do is look at SNMP. The first one it finds that works, it's going to use. So you could put multiple SNMP credentials in here, but you want to order them with these order errors so that you select the one you want to use first. There's multiple devices that respond to multiple SNMPs. That would be the case where you want multiple credentials in here. Same with Telnet, and you can also do an optional type thing like HTTP. You can add those. Sorry, let me think of the device I want to use here. So I want these preset up here, and so my credentials are good. We're going to go to Actions. The Actions tab is automatically seeded with these top 5 or 6, 5 actions here. These are just general things we want to happen to this device or group of devices once it's discovered. For instance, putting things in groups for discovery, click discovery later, resyncing it later, refreshing monitor targets is something we want. But you can also add your own actions. And so here's an example of an action I've added. For example, if I want all these devices to be automatically send me traps, I've set up an action already and I've included it here. And it's prompting me for the data here. I want it to send me, informs. I want it to be, this is the community public, the community string QA public, and some various other parameters that could be entered. So when this gets executed, it will automatically go and put this command on the box to send traps to this IP address. And that's just an example of one action. Just be aware you can add or remove actions from here. And finally, there's the inspection process. Here we can just do a simple start inspection. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through, and because I didn't check ping, it's not showing the ping here because I had that unchecked. We go back there and just recheck that. Go back and inspect. So it's going to go through the process first of pinging. Second thing it's going to do is check the SNMP and then any other credentials. So you see here it's ready to discover everything is successful. If you have any problems with any of the credentials in here, which you'll see is a little diamond icon, and that's a clue for you. You may have multiple devices in this list. That's a clue for you to go in and review that first. In some cases, there are optional parameters. For instance, HTTP is optional. And the little icon might say optional attribute is not there or is not valid. And so you see a failure here. This is your opportunity to go and either reset that credential, re-add a new credential. So it's simple as going back. You can go to previous, or you can go back to the network. You go back to previous into this screen, and you would just modify your credentials and then try it again until you get valid results. So I've got a successful execution here. I'm sorry, a successful inspection here, and now I just click execute, discover. And so this is a typical screen here. One thing I want to note here is that I have informationals turned on. And for people who aren't aware, you can enable these type of things on any screen where you see the audit screen. We're going to talk about this informational in a minute. If you don't have this checked, you're not going to see any of that data. You're just going to see the green, and you won't see that additional data. Okay, so anyway, when this finishes, your device is fully under management and discovered. And so I'm not going to watch this here. It might take a minute, but that's essentially the trip through the discovery profiles, how to create them up, how to execute them, and adjust your credentials based on inspection. I'm going to close that for now. And then the last thing I want to discuss today is there's an option that you may not know about in the control panel, and that is the application settings. And you have some flexibility over some things that are, I guess, settable in the normal application. On the first page here, you see items related to just general managed resources. You can set the polling second. This is the ICMP polling interval on the managed resource screen when it updates. Same with the alarm polling. How often you want that screen to update. It's not necessarily when they're going to show up. It's just how often you want that screen to show new traps that have come in. Same with the container tree. You can set that. Visualizer polling, how often you want that screen updated, as well as map context. On the user interface tab, there's a variety of options here. We do have a map context portlet that allows you to set the map that you want in the background. You can actually set the initial loading longitude and latitude. You also have an option to use Nokia Maps. Nokia Maps is a purchased product, and so don't recommend using it. It's only for cases where you might want a different geographical representation of a map, and so it's just basically how it draws the boundaries. Google Maps is the default, but you can change that. In the job viewer, here's the checkbox where you can allow those informational items all the time. You just check that, and you won't have to go in and check those informationals every time you see one of those job viewers. Useful for troubleshooting if you want to see those. If you want to show the job after execution, you can do that here. That's for jobs that don't automatically show the execution. And especially for actions, there's one here. If you want to always see that screen, you can check it here. It's already checked by default. On the performance screen, there's a variety of options that you can set for your formatting. Just be aware of this here, and you can experiment with that. On the server tab, this is the screen that controls the log out of the screen. So you can override the system default, which is 240 minutes. And you can do it by role. If you create your own roles, they would show up here, and you can have certain user roles expire at different times if you need to. So again, be aware that that's here. Okay, I believe that concludes the recorded portion of the talk.